So Revelations came out recently from a sannyasi called Erin Robbins dealing with sexual abuse from Osho. It's clear that you can have incredible wisdom and insight on spiritual matters, yet still have a shadow. A shadow is seen clearly in your actions as well as what arises around you. The people you choose to be with, the places you go to, the energy you attract. The documentary Wild Wild Country documents the story of the poisonings, attempted murders, etc. But it didn't touch on the revelations of sexual abuse of women and children which have come out since its release. As we know, waking up is a process of seeing beyond personality, with all of its justifications, beliefs, and repressions, and seeing life as it is. It's only by seeing beyond personality awareness that we can see how such unloving, abusive, violent events happen in a gathering of people, which is apparently based around enlightenment. And the answer is the shadow. There is a Hans Christian Andersen story called The Shadow, in which, to quote from Wikipedia, a man's shadow becomes self-aware. It takes on a life of its own. It becomes so strong that its violence destroys all good in the person. This points to the shadow being a kind of entity. It's like a sub-personality that not only overpowers the light of the person, but it also becomes stronger than all the other parts of the personality. It rises up and seeks to take control of the person. And in the end, as seen with addictive personalities, it even kills them. Sometimes the negativity of the shadow is not focused outwards to other people, but inwards, for example, in the form of self-destructive patterns. And this was the case with Alan Watts' alcohol addiction. The light of his wisdom and clarity, which was so deep, could not overcome the dark of his shadow. Watts said that he didn't want to play the guru game and pretend to be some perfected, enlightened being. To his credit, he didn't hide the fact of his addiction. So he didn't lie to himself about his shadow. He didn't repress it. But that didn't help him. He still died of heart problems related to alcohol poisoning. You could say, like in the Andersen story, his shadow killed him. Some non-dualists argue that this is just the two sides of life, the duality of good and bad, light and dark playing out in human life. We are what we are. The best you can do is accept it. This fatalistic stance of what they call radical self-acceptance may sound very cool, non-dualistic, but if you think about it, basically it boils down to the denial of awakening. It suggests that we are doomed to just live out our fucked up personalities, our disease, our violence. In other words, it is simply saying that we are our personality. So are we defined, limited by the shadow, or can we go beyond it? Of course, I would say yes, because going beyond the shadow means going beyond personality. But before we go into how the shadow can be transcended, we need to be clear about what exactly we mean by the term, the shadow. Is the wound part of the shadow? There is an important distinction to be made. The shadow is not a catch-all term that refers to everything in the subconscious. We all have things that are not yet made conscious, and that seems to be part of being human. So the wound is not part of the shadow. The shadow is what the personality does with the wound. I'm going to read that line again. The shadow is what the personality does with the wound. The shadow relates specifically to repressed emotions and beliefs in the subconscious, which create negative patterns of action, whether they be committed to oneself or others. In the story of you, I referenced a documentary about a teenager who killed his parents. On the surface, he was a normal boy, but in his subconscious, there was a deep well of anger and resentment towards his parents and their authoritarian control over his life. This grew and grew in his shadow until one day it took over his conscious mind. The normal social restraint was breached, and it culminated in murder. It's like the conscious person gets possessed by the shadow. It's what Robbie Louis Stevenson captured so brilliantly in the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's what we mean when someone says they have a demon, an entity controlling their behavior, which may be at odds with their everyday presentation. So the shadow is a particular extreme form of personality in which actions arise from the patterns that are extremely negative in nature. It all comes from repressed emotions building to a boiling point. So how do we free ourselves from the shadow and stop it dominating or even taking over our lives? The only way it can happen is if you have the yearning. If you don't have the yearning to wake up, the shadow will always win. It will always outmaneuver you. You cannot escape it. But if the yearning is there, it is possible, because the yearning is an attraction to the light, while the shadow is an attraction, a pull to the dark of violence and unlove. If the attraction to the light is stronger than the attraction to the darkness, then the darkness loses. When the personality is truly seen through, then it is seen that the shadow isn't real. You could say it is going beyond the duality of light and dark to a place where there is only light. I suppose there's a danger in that, because, you know, people can get hold of it as a concept and turn it into a goal and all of that. But, you know, you've got to use words, and it's just a word pointing to something that is real. Yeah. So the brainwashing is this program put into you that you don't question which is the opposite of inquiry. You don't question the top man. It runs so deep, and then all these justifications grow up around it. And then it gets to this point where it's cumulative, compound, because the longer you go, the more of your life you've given, the more of the money you've given, the more of the friends you've lost, the family you've lost, whatever. The harder it is to sort of admit, because it's like you're losing more and more as time goes by, in a way.
Denial of the wound makes us vulnerable to others, and that's a shadow in itself, isn't it? The denial of our wound, because then we seek others to fix that in some way or alleviate that, making ourselves vulnerable to our own denial of what's going on within. Right. So we put ourselves in the hands of other people who then that opens up to abuse or potential abuse.
Yeah. So you're saying, like, the real work is not going and bowing down at the feet of a guru. It's the confrontation with your wound is the direct real work.
Like, without going through the shift, you're almost susceptible for this type of shadow stuff coming up. So,
well, you will be. Yeah. Absolutely. That is your journey. Confrontation with your personality, which involves confrontation with whatever shadow is there, meaning the negative side. I mean, you could argue most of personality is negative, but the kind of, in the definition I gave the shadow in that piece, where it's expressing in negative patterns and hatred and violence and whatever to yourself or others. Yeah. So it's a confrontation with that, whatever's left of that. And that's your willingness to do that. We've talked about this before. You can have openings, you can be wise, you can have had understandings, and yet here's the shadow still. So all of that points to the fact that this is why the shift is, as a term, I think, has great validity, because it's the shift beyond the personality. That means beyond all that shadow stuff. There is a place beyond all that. So it's not just that you have openings and you know some spiritual stuff, but you're fucked up and you're horrible to people, you know. There is something else, and that's what we're talking about here. Yeah. And it helps understand all these teachers and all the crap you read about going on out there, to know that, yeah, you can have that, but if you still got your personality running, then you're going to have that. But I want to end on a positive note. It's like, don't forget in all of this, we're looking at heavy stuff, and this is basically what we're saying, isn't it? It's like you have to see what is. So we're looking at really heavy stuff, and it could end up that you just start feeling, Jesus, you know, life is so, that is so dark. And it is dark, right? It is dark. But what we're doing here is light. Light is, we're affirming light, I'm using that word to characterize it, is real. You can transcend the shadow. That is the real message of awakening. And people, that happens. It's real. And it's a shame in a way that there are so many examples of the people who are meant to be representing that, because they almost disprove it. And that's why, partly why it's kind of depressing, you know, but, you know, it's not always the case.
Doesn't it show that, you know, the kind of default position of humans is to avoid painful feelings?
Yeah.
You know, and then they get repressed. And like, that's such a strong motivating thing for humans. Don't go near that. Don't touch that. So package it away. Now it's going to control you. But that's openness to feeling is such a difficult thing. It's like we're doing the opposite here. We're, you know, we're opening to, what am I feeling? What's, you know, what's the underlying feeling?
Yeah. It does all come from that.
Yeah.
Because if you know, this is why we talk about personality and why we talk about the natural state. Because the natural state has no fucking shadow. And that's how we begin. It's real. I suppose the idea is, some people could think, oh yeah, well, when we're kids, we're innocent, but let's not believe in fairy tales, you know, everybody gets fucked up. Well, yeah, everybody gets fucked up, but it doesn't mean our true nature is not there to be refound, and that it can't be lived. But it does take that confrontation with the dark side, you know, of in us, you know, our wound, the dark, you know, the pain, the awful pain, the places you have to go to, and also seeing, you know, the Osho thing, and he's just one of many, you know.